On a quiet Tuesday evening, Michael Reynolds, the elusive owner of a renowned steakhouse chain, slipped into one of his own restaurants under the guise of an ordinary customer, only to receive a cryptic note from a waitress that would unravel a hidden truth and freeze him in his tracks. Michael Reynolds sat at a corner table in his upscale Chicago steakhouse, the Ember Grill, blending seamlessly into the crowd. He was dressed in a simple navy blazer and jeans, his usual tailored suits replaced to maintain his anonymity. At 42, Michael had built a culinary empire from a single-family diner, turning it into a national chain known for its perfectly seared steaks and impeccable service. But tonight, he wasn't the celebrated entrepreneur featured in Forbes. He was just Mike, a guy grabbing dinner, or so he wanted everyone to believe. His visits to his restaurants were unannounced, a habit he'd developed to keep his staff on their toes and ensure the quality he'd staked his reputation on. The Ember Grill was one of his flagship locations, a sleek space with warm lighting and dark wood accents, buzzing with the hum of conversation and the clink of wine glasses. Michael scanned the room, noting the polished movements of the servers and the satisfied expressions of the diners. Everything seemed in order, but he was here to dig deeper. Recent online reviews had hinted at inconsistencies, slow service, cold food, and an occasional complaint about staff attitude. Michael didn't tolerate mediocrity, and he was determined to see for himself what was happening. A young waitress approached his table, her name tag reading Lila. She was in her mid-20s, with dark hair pulled into a neat ponytail and a smile that seemed genuine but guarded. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to the Ember Grill. I'm Lila, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. Can I start you with something to drink?" Her voice was professional, with a slight Midwestern lilt. Michael returned a polite nod. "Just water for now, thanks. And I'll need a minute with the menu." "Of course," Lila said, placing a leather-bound menu in front of him. She hesitated for a fraction of a second, her eyes lingering on him before she turned away. Michael barely noticed, already flipping through the menu he knew by heart. He decided on the bone-in ribeye, medium rare, with a side of truffle mashed potatoes, a classic order that would test the kitchen's precision. As Lila returned with his water, Michael placed his order, keeping his tone casual. "I'll have the bone-in ribeye, medium rare, and the truffle mashed potatoes." "Oh, and can you make it quick? I'm pretty hungry." Lila scribbled the order on her notepad, nodding. "Got it. I'll make sure the kitchen knows. Anything else I can get for you?" "That's all for now," Michael said, leaning back in his chair. He watched her walk away, noting her efficiency. So far, so good. The service was prompt, the demeanor professional. But something about her brief hesitation earlier nagged at him. Was it nerves? Or something else? While waiting for his food, Michael observed the dining room. A couple at a nearby table laughed over a shared dessert, their server refilling their wine glasses with practiced ease. At another table, a family of four was deep in conversation, their plates nearly cleared. The atmosphere was exactly what Michael had envisioned when he opened the Ember Grill, a place where people felt welcomed, indulged, and cared for. But he wasn't here to admire his success. He was here to find flaws. His phone buzzed with a text from his operations manager, Karen, who was one of the few people aware of his undercover visits. "Anything stand out yet?" the message read. Michael typed back. "Too early to tell. Service seems solid. Food's next." He slipped his phone back into his pocket just as Lila returned with his meal. The ribeye was presented on a sizzling cast-iron plate, the aroma of charred meat and rosemary filling the air. The mashed potatoes were piped elegantly beside it, flecked with black truffle. It looked perfect. Michael thanked Lila, who offered another smile before stepping away. He cut into the steak, inspecting the pink center. Spot-on medium rare. The first bite was tender, juicy, with just the right amount of seasoning. The kitchen was holding up its end of the bargain. As he ate, Michael kept an eye on Lila. She moved between tables with confidence, chatting briefly with a group of regulars before clearing plates from another. But every so often, her eyes darted toward the back of the restaurant, where the kitchen doors swung open and closed. Michael followed her gaze, noticing a man in a chef's coat standing near the pass, barking orders at the line cooks. That must be Victor, the head chef, Michael thought. He'd heard mixed reports about Victor. Talented but temperamental, a perfectionist who didn't always play well with others. Halfway through his meal, Lila approached to check on him. "Everything tasting all right, sir?" "It's excellent," Michael said truthfully. "The steak's perfect." "Glad to hear it," Lila replied, but her smile faltered slightly. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a small folded piece of paper, placing it next to his water glass. "Just a little something for you," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Before Michael could respond, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the bustle of the dining room. Michael stared at the paper, his fork pausing midair. It was an unusual gesture. Waitstaff didn't typically hand out notes unless it was a receipt or a special request. Curiosity piqued. He unfolded it carefully, keeping it low against the table. The note was written in neat, hurried handwriting. "You're being watched. Don't trust the numbers. Check the books." Michael's pulse quickened. He read the note again, his mind racing. Watched? By whom? And what did the books mean? The restaurant's financials? Something else? He glanced around, suddenly hyper-aware of every face in the room. The couple with their dessert, the family finishing their meal, the servers weaving through tables. Nothing seemed out of place. Yet the note's warning was clear, and it sent a chill down his spine. He tucked the note into his pocket, trying to maintain his composure. Lila was back at another table, acting as if nothing had happened. Michael forced himself to take another bite of his steak, but his appetite was gone. The note had shifted everything. This wasn't just about slow service or a cold plate anymore. Something deeper was at play, and Lila, for whatever reason, had chosen him to tip off. Michael's first instinct was to confront her, but he held back. If he revealed who he was, it might spook her or whoever she was warning him about. Instead, he decided to play along, finish his meal, and observe. He flagged Lila down for the check, watching her closely as she approached. "Everything okay?" she asked, her tone neutral but her eyes searching his face. "Yeah, just ready to settle up," Michael said, keeping his voice steady. He handed her his credit card, making sure to use one with a generic name that wouldn't betray his identity. As she processed the payment, he studied her. Was she nervous? Scared? Her hands moved quickly, but there was no tremor, no obvious sign of distress. She returned with the receipt, placing it on the table with another folded piece of paper. "Have a great night," she said, her voice still low, before walking away. Michael's heart thudded as he opened the second note. This one was even briefer. "Meet me out back. 10 minutes. He checked his watch. It was 8:45 p.m. The alley behind the restaurant would be dark, secluded, a risky place for a meeting. But Michael wasn't one to back down from a challenge. If Lila had answers, he needed to hear them. He left a generous tip, signed the receipt, and stepped outside, the cool Chicago air hitting his face as he walked toward the alley. The alley was narrow, lined with dumpsters and a few parked delivery vans. A single streetlight flickered, casting long shadows. Michael leaned against the brick wall, his hands in his pockets, one gripping the notes Lila had given him. He wasn't sure what to expect, but he was ready for anything, or so he thought. At exactly 8:55, Lila appeared at the mouth of the alley, glancing over her shoulder before approaching. She was still in her server's uniform, her apron gone, and her expression was tense. "You came," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You didn't give me much choice," Michael replied, keeping his tone neutral. "What's this about?" "The note. What do you mean I'm being watched?" Lila hesitated, her eyes darting to the shadows. "I don't have much time. They'll notice I'm gone. Look, I don't know who you are, but you're not just some random customer. I've seen you before, maybe not here, but somewhere. You're asking too many questions, watching too closely. They're onto you." "Who's they?" Michael pressed, his voice firm but low. Lila swallowed hard. "Victor. The chef. And maybe others. I don't know how deep it goes. But the numbers in this place, they don't add up. Inventory's off, cash goes missing, and Victor's always got an excuse. I've been here 6 months and I've seen things. I heard them talking about you tonight, saying you're trouble. Michael's mind raced. Victor had been with the company for years, a trusted employee despite his rough edges. Could he be involved in something shady? Embezzlement? Theft? And how did Lila know Michael wasn't just a regular customer? He decided to test her. Why tell me? What makes you think I can do anything about it? Lila's eyes narrowed. Because you're not like the others. You're watching the staff, the food, everything. You're not here for the steak. I don't know if you're a cop, a reporter, or what, but you need to be careful. If they find out I talked to you, I'm done. Michael weighed his options. He could reveal he was the owner, demand answers, and pull Lila into his office for a full explanation. But that might shut her down or tip off whoever else was involved. Instead, he nodded.
All right.
I'll look into it. But I need more than this. What's in the books? What am I looking for? Lila glanced back toward the restaurant. The invoices. Start with the meat suppliers. The numbers don't match what's coming in. And check the cash deposits. They're skimming, I'm sure of it. I've got to go. She turned to leave, then paused. Don't come back here. Not for a while. Before Michael could respond, she was gone, disappearing back into the restaurant. He stood in the alley, the weight of her words sinking in. The notes, her warnings, the mention of Victor, it all pointed to something rotten in his restaurant. But how deep did it go? And how had Lila pegged him as someone other than a customer? Michael returned to his car, his mind churning. He pulled out his phone and texted Karen. We've got a problem. Meet me at the office tomorrow. Bring the financials for Chicago. Over the next few days, Michael dove into the records. The invoices from the meat suppliers showed discrepancies. Quantities ordered didn't match what was delivered, yet the payments were always full. Cash deposits were inconsistent, with small amounts unaccounted for each week. It wasn't enough to raise red flags in a casual audit, but to Michael's trained eye, it was clear someone was manipulating the numbers. He called in an independent auditor, keeping his suspicions quiet. He also had Karen pull employee records. Lila's file showed she'd been hired 6 months ago, with a clean record and solid references. But there was nothing to indicate why she'd risk her job to tip him off. Was she trying to help, or was she part of something bigger, playing him to cover her own tracks? Michael couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, just as Lila had warned. At the corporate office, he noticed small things. A file left slightly askew, a login attempt on his computer that wasn't his. He tightened security, changed passwords, and kept his investigation discreet. A week later, the auditor confirmed Michael's suspicions. The discrepancies in the Chicago location's books pointed to a skimming operation, likely involving at least 2 people. Victor's name came up repeatedly in the paperwork, his signature on invoices that didn't add up. Michael felt a pang of betrayal. Victor had been with him since the early days, a chef whose talent had helped put the Ember Grill on the map. Michael decided to confront Victor, but not before gathering more evidence. He installed discreet cameras in the restaurant's office and had Karen monitor the cash handling. Within days, they caught Victor pocketing cash from the register and falsifying the deposit slips. The evidence was undeniable. The confrontation took place in the restaurant's back office after hours. Victor sat across from Michael, his face pale but defiant. You've got no proof, he said, his voice tight. I've got enough, Michael replied, sliding a stack of invoices and video stills across the desk. You've been skimming for months, maybe longer. Why, Victor? You had a good thing here. Victor's jaw clenched. You think you know everything, don't you? You sit in your fancy office, counting your millions, while we're out here grinding. I deserved more. Michael kept his voice steady. You could have asked for more. Instead, you stole from me, from the team, from the customers. You're done here. Victor stood, his chair scraping the floor. You'll regret this, Michael. You don't know who you're messing with. The threat hung in the air, but Michael didn't flinch. Get out.
Now.
Victor left, and Michael immediately contacted his legal team. The police were brought in, and an investigation began. But Lila's warning about being watched still gnawed at him. Was Victor working alone? Or was there someone else pulling the strings? And where did Lila fit into all this? Michael tried to find her, but she'd quit the day after their alley meeting. Her employee file had no forwarding address, and her phone number was disconnected. It was as if she'd vanished. He couldn't help but wonder if she'd been scared off, or worse. Months later, the investigation wrapped up. Victor was charged with theft, and the restaurant's finances were cleaned up. The Ember Grill regained its reputation, but Michael couldn't shake the memory of Lila's notes. He kept them in his desk drawer, a reminder of how close he'd come to missing the truth. One evening, as he sat in his office reviewing reports, a letter arrived with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, written in familiar handwriting. "You did the right thing. Stay sharp." Michael stared at the note, his heart racing. It was unsigned, but he knew it was from Lila. Wherever she was still watching. And so was he.